Welcome to We and Lewes, a podcast dedicated to see what I mean? Subellating.
Take your time, Kevin.
Subellating, yeah.
We're all friends here, Kevin. Just ease into it.
Welcome to We and Lewes, a podcast dedicated to celebrating the remarkable, creative, and energetic people who live in Lewes and are helping our community forge a collective soul as appealing as it is unique. These are their stories in their words. They are the we in Lewes. I'm your host, Kevin McGinnis. Our guest today is Stephanie Boright, the founder and owner of Coastal Cottage Renovations, a full-service design and build contractor with a dazzling record of projects in the area. Unlike some of her peers and competitors, she's also a decorated veteran of the film and television world. Not many of the guests on this podcast have bios on the Internet Movie Database, better known as IMDb. You know, that site you click on when you're watching TV and your spouse goes, "Where have we seen that actor before?" She worked on The West Wing, NCIS, Spy Game, Armageddon, Transformers, and X-Men: The Last Stand, to name just a few. She's living proof that television and movie production can make construction projects look like a day at the library. In the name of editorial integrity, I have to mention that she completed a major, simply gorgeous project on our house. Kath and I and the dogs lived through the entire construction. It was such an easy, fun experience that Stephanie vowed never to do that again. Today's episode is brought to you by Captain Matt Mundock and the team at Tide Runner Adventures. Whether you have friends and family visiting for the weekend or you're making your annual trip to the Delaware beaches, Tide Runner Adventures help you make the most of your time together on the water. They offer customized small boat adventures for families, friends, and small groups, from relaxing intercoastal and sunset cruises to fishing to nature trips like dolphin watching and birding. And there's also fun in the water, swimming, tubing, or their new adventure, Sandbar Olympics. Every adventure is private, personal, and built around hospitality, helping guests relax, have fun, and make lasting memories. Visit TideRunnerAdventures.com to start your adventure today. Trust me, you'll be amazed. Steph, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Kev.
What was the moment that led you to giving up what most of us think is the coolest, most glamorous profession imaginable for building and renovating homes in a community with fewer people than you once had to corral on a movie set?
Well, first of all, thank you for that nice introduction. I'm like, wow, who is she? She sounds fabulous. Well, I moved here in 2010. My husband and I bought a house here, our first house, in 2001 after 9/11. We lived near the Pentagon and right outside of D.C., and I came a little unglued after that. So we came here. We came for the Christmas tour parade and fell in love with the town. And then we saw this cute little house on Mulberry Street, and we bought it that weekend. And then we would come up on weekends and fix it up. And then we sold that house, and we bought the house 6 doors down and did the same thing to that one. And by then, my husband and I had renovated, I want to say, probably 22 houses and townhouses at that point. So we were getting pretty good at it. And we were doing this on top of our full-time jobs, which we both worked lots and lots of hours. So I'm not quite sure how we fit it all in. But in 2010, my husband had the opportunity to move his job down here in Salisbury. And so we moved here full-time when our daughter was 10. When we got to the second house on Mulberry Street, we would be gone for like 3 weeks, and we'd come back and nothing had been done. We'd be so excited to see the progress, and nothing had been done. So it drove both of us crazy. And so when we moved down here full time in 2010, and I was kind of coming down off the production world. It was getting harder and harder to go back and forth to DC. I'd have to stay with people. And I was like, I got to start something new. You know, it's unrealistic for me to kind of keep this going back and forth. My daughter was in school, and I'd be gone for days on end and try to come back and assimilate back to Lewes life. So I was sitting on the beach one day with my friends, Mariah and Lisa, and Mariah turns to me and says, "You should start a renovation company." And she had through Dogfish, had just bought a couple of properties that backed up to their warehouse and needed them renovated. She said, start a company and we'll have you renovate those houses. And so then Coastal Cottage Renovations was born. She'd already knew that I had renovated 1 million properties before that. And I had said to her, it drove me crazy. I would come down here and nothing had ever been done. And I said, I can do better. You know, as long as you have people working every day, you can get a project done pretty quickly. So that was how I started it. I said, you know, I'm just going to dive right into it. And the same skills that you use as a producer, you use in producing a house, basically. You know, it's just there's a linear movement to getting work done. And I just figured out what those things were, having done them before. This obviously was on a much larger scale. But as long as I had people working every day and I knew the job was getting done and constant communication with clients, that was the other key. I was just making sure that I was FaceTiming clients. I was sending them pictures every day because this is someone's home. It's so important to them. I mean, you lived through it, so you were there every day. You had to put up with me as opposed to me calling you every day and sort of getting excited like, oh, this is happening.
You mentioned you and your husband, Barry Boright, who, by the way, looks like he's right out of Central Casting, have been remodeling homes, I know in Baltimore, townhouses. Is that right?
Yes. So we did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 houses in Virginia. And then we did 12 townhouses in Fells Point. And then here in Lewes, we're on our 3rd house here. And then we've done a bunch of rental properties. So I think we did 4 houses and a building in Milton. So kind of knew what I was doing when I started it. And, you know, my husband was always really supportive of it. He, you know, was never like, what are you thinking, starting a construction company? He just thought it was the coolest thing. He's like, yeah, you should totally do that.
Did either one of you have construction experience?
No, we just love design. In fact, it was such a sickness for us. Every time we'd go on a vacation somewhere, we would pull up, you know, back in the old days, they had like the magazines of houses for sale. And we would always look at houses that were for sale and we'd be like, you know what I would do to that? I would add windows over here and I'd add a dormer over here, or I'd add a porch on this, or it needs shutters, or it needs window boxes. You know, we would design houses as we were traveling. So we always have had a love of houses, especially old houses.
As your business has evolved, it seems you're doing more and more new builds or complete rebuilds. In some ways, is that easier than doing a renovation?
100%. So my first new build, I had a client, she'd called me years ago. She had a house on the beach, and it was one of those Lewes beach houses that was kind of added on throughout the years. And I remember she called me over, and I said, well, you know, I think you probably just need like a handyman to do this kind of work. And 4 years later, she called me and she said, okay, we want you to build our house. We just bought a piece of land over in Mariner's Retreat. And I said, well, you know, I've never done a new build. She goes, okay. And I said, well, here, I'd like you to call all of my previous clients and talk to them because I've never done a new build. And it was going on a slab foundation. And I'd never done one of those before either. I've done foundations, but not a slab foundation. So I was like, well, there's definitely a learning curve here. I made it perfectly clear I, you know, was maybe in over my head. But she was undaunted and never actually even called any of my previous clients. And I forged ahead. And, you know, it was sort of the same thing I did in television. I always hired the A team. So I made sure that I hired the best people to do all the work, all the subs, all my subs. I hired the best foundation people, best electricians, best plumbers, and they always made me look good. And so I just kind of transferred that over to building, and it worked out. I mean, it's a beautiful home, and she's thrilled with it. So, yeah, so that was a little bit easier than tearing apart a house that built in 1850 and going, what is behind this wall? Oh my gosh, these floors are all uneven. I'm doing a house right now on Mulberry Street, and you literally from one end to the other, it was off by 2.5 inches. So I had to rebuild all the floor joists and, you know, the new subfloor. And so now it's nice and sturdy and even. So you don't put a marble on it. It doesn't roll from one end to the other.
You obviously have a terrific eye for home design and a wealth of ideas about what can be done. How do you balance what a customer is thinking with what you know could be done?
So, you know, people will call me and they'll say, oh, I have this great idea and, you know, can we do this? And a lot of times we can't. There's setbacks. There's other issues with the house. Sometimes it's really boils down to design, because I think people sometimes just go, I need a 12 by 14 room added on my house. And, sort of just stick it on there kind of thing. And maybe it doesn't make sense, or maybe it does make sense. But, I really try to walk my clients through those challenges and say, well, I know what you need, but let's see if maybe we could do it this way. And, I'm never short of ideas when I meet with clients. And that's, for me, that's the fun part. I love to reimagine space. And that's primarily why I like renovations, because I like to look at something and go, what we could do. And it's fun, because then clients get really excited about it too. And they're like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. So that's a lot of fun.
Do you have clients who meet with you, and I don't think we did this, but do you have clients who meet with you and say, I want you to design this, but I need to have this piece of marble or this X in the house, and whatever you do, you have to design around it?
Oh, well, yes, absolutely. And this is a shout out to my current clients, Paula and Frank, because Frank and they have a piece of marble up in their attic, and they're like, we really want you to do something with this. And I was like, okay, I'll try to do something with this. But some cases it works. I did a house on Donovan's Road for some lovely clients, the Stulls, Gary and Ryle, and they had a lot of stuff from a previous home that she grew up in. And she had these French doors, glass French doors, and then they had this leaded glass window, and they're like, can you use these? And so I was like, okay, I guess I got to figure something out. But that's fun. So we use the leaded glass window in an upstairs bedroom to kind of separate the bedroom from the hallway and add a little extra light. And then with the French doors, I built a whole linen closet around these French doors. So yeah, that is a lot of fun for me to find old new uses for old pieces of architecture. I've pulled doors out of the garbage before people are throwing them away. I did this beautiful house on Bay Avenue, and I found this old door. It was painted red, and it had come out of a pharmacy, and it was a big, thick door, and I had it stripped down, and I used it as the pantry door, and it's the showpiece of the house. It's beautiful.
As anyone who has been involved in construction in this area knows, there are a lot of rules, and I mean lots. And properties are much closer to their neighbors than you would realize when you start. Do these realities impact some of your designs?
Yeah, so I think the rules change a lot too here in Lewes.
They do.
It's kind of hard to keep up with them sometimes. And we've gone through a lot of different folks in the building office here in Lewes, and we've got a great group of folks in there right now. But again, it's one of those things where they now have an accessory dwelling unit that you can do here in Lewes. But they're saying, setbacks are a bit of an issue right now. So I'm like, before it was 5 feet. Now they're saying something different. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. It's always been 5 feet. So, can I do it at 5 feet? So we're still in the baby stages as things change, trying to maneuver around the new rules and regulations and what can and can't be done. So it's always in flux.
You and your construction team are extremely ingenious when it comes to solving problems. With our house, we needed to install a 15-foot steel beam whose weight was measured in tons. Every builder we talked with said it was a hard no. You'd need a crane, they said, maybe a helicopter, and so on. For you, it was nothing. I still remember the day I looked out and saw your crew carrying the beam down the side of the house. Then they raised it into place using a series of ropes and pulleys. How were you able to assemble such a crew?
So I think, with those kinds of things, I think my feeling when I'm building is always anything's possible, so why not? The other issue with your house was they said you needed these helical pilings. I don't know if you remember that whole thing. And so I said, well, why don't we just kind of dig down and see what you got going on there now? And actually, we were fine. We already had the footings in there, so we were good with that.
If I remember correctly, we had a footing basically the size of a tennis court.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that was a wonderful find. But, I don't know. I've always had guys who think outside the box, and I think they even had a winch on that thing.
You have really cool taste. You have really good ideas. You can't do them all, but you kind of make sure there's at least one of your, like the pantry doors.
Yeah.
Or do you always try to make sure one of your ideas is in there?
Well, in the beginning, it was always about that. Like, I love finding old things. There wasn't an old door or an old window that I didn't find and put in my storage unit and go, what can I do with this? And so I kind of got known for that. So people seek me out now because of that. And so I'll have a client when they first meet me go, okay, so what kind of old thing can you put in here? And so that's kind of fun for me, for them to go, oh, they get it. They totally kind of get my vibe. And especially a lot of these houses are old houses. Some of the houses are new houses, and they want a little extra charm so it doesn't just look like a cookie cutter house. So I think anybody who hires me now sort of expects that from me. What are you going to bring to this? What kind of cool old door or old window or something, made from, I have a lot of craftsmen that I work with, wood counters, just something that gives a house a little bit of extra charm and warmth.
Construction traditionally pretty much is a male environment, and it's rumored that men can have some pretty fragile egos. Easy, Steve, I said rumored. Did your work in movie and television prepare you for being the boss of construction workers?
I think, yeah, probably 100%. The film business is generally male-driven, and as is construction. And I've been asked that question a few times. Have you had any backlash, or has anybody kind of given you a hard time being a woman in the business? And I would say, for the most part, no, really. I learned to be bossy on a film set, so I've transferred that over to my company as well. So clients will hire me, and they know I'm a little pushy with ideas sometimes. I'm like, I think this is going to be great. You're going to love this, and generally they'll go with it. Certainly they have an idea of what they want, obviously, but sometimes I have to kind of push them in a direction that I think it should go in. And knock on wood, so hopefully it's gone well up to now, where they've been happy with the finished product.
Managing men is not always easy.
Oh, well, you've seen me, Kevin, and at that with my guys. Like, men need their ego stroked. Sorry, but I'm constantly giving them a pat on the back. Good job. This is great. Maybe we don't want to use this because I don't want them knowing my tricks.
Well, that assumes
yeah,
your crew would listen to this. But anyway. How did you get started in the television film industry?
So when I was 14, I always knew what I was going to do. I planned to work. I wanted to be a news producer originally. And when I was 14, there was a local cable station in my hometown in Massachusetts. And I would go in and I created my own little fitness and nutrition show. And I did that. And then when I went to college,
Wait. You were in high school and you created your own show, which was aired?
Yeah. Well,
that's incredible.
It was a little dinky town, but yeah. It was, they needed content. So they'd hire anybody, apparently. I didn't get paid for it, but so that's kind of how I got started. And my mom was a nutritionist, so I would kind of, pick her brain and write some scripts. And that's how I started doing that. And then when I went to college, I got a degree in English, and I would, I got internships at radio stations in Worcester, Massachusetts. And then when I interned at CNN, that's how I ended up in D.C. So my junior year, from junior to senior year, I interned at CNN, and I moved back thinking, okay, I'll get a job at CNN. They'll hire me. Well, that didn't work out. So I ended up meeting somebody by accident who was working on the movie JFK. This was 1991, I think. And she was doing research for it. And she said, hey, they're coming here to film. Do you want me to see if they'll hire you as a production assistant? I said, yeah, that sounds great. I'll try that. And so I remember being so excited. I was bartending at night. So I bartended till like 2 a.m. Then I had to be on set at 4 a.m. And I did that for 3 days straight. And I remember we were filming on the mall in D.C., and I was PAs do what's called lockup. So you've got to lock up the set, make sure people don't come through the scene as they're filming the scene. So I'm out in the middle of nowhere, and I can't even see the camera or the actors or anything, any of the action. I'm literally on this path, and I remember this guy on a bike came up, and I was like, "Excuse me, sir, can you just hold up for a second? We're filming a movie." And he basically told me to F off, and he pays taxes, and he can go wherever he wants. So he goes through the path, and then I hear on the walkie-talkie, "Who let that bike through?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm already screwing up my first day on the job." But that was my first movie, and then after that, there were more movies. Once you start in the business, and if you do a good job and you don't complain, that was the key. Don't complain, because the hours are really long and they're hard, and it's in all kinds of weather. And one job led to the next job. One job led to the next job, and I just slowly worked my way up from a PA to a locations assistant, to a location manager, to a coordinator, to a unit production manager, to a producer.
Not all of us know what those jobs mean.
Okay.
So what is, choose one.
Oh.
I actually have no idea what a producer does, because
Okay.
I know they do a lot and they do everything, but you'll see movies now or shows that have 42 producers on it. So
a lot of those
not
are
all
yes,
doing the same
exactly.
thing. Yeah.
So I was a line producer. So basically, a line producer is the one actually doing the actual work. You've executive producers, and a lot of those people are like either stars of the show,
or they have a lot of money,
or they have a lot of money, or they're part of the studio. But a line producer does the budget. So in other words, if a movie came into DC, I'll take, for example, Armageddon. When Armageddon came to D.C., they said, okay, we want to film these particular scenes in D.C. Then they fly the director out and the producer out, and we scout the locations, and they say, okay, we want 300 extras. We're going to need period cars. We're going to need to light from the top of a building, because this is the old days when we actually shot film. So it was a little less forgiving. You actually had to light it. So I would have to make sure that I would have to budget that based on our meetings. So then I would have to manage those line items, everything. So the electricians, the grips, the hair and makeup, the extras, the locations, the police. I mean, we needed tons of police, the Teamsters. So that's what a producer does. They hire and manage the actual filming.
So you're preparing budgets. So you're having to coordinate all of these disparate entities.
Yes. Yeah.
And all so they can come today, and they're all excited to be there, but you still have to coordinate them.
Yes. And I will tell you, sometimes I'm shocked that I survived it, because it was an exhausting job. When we'd be on a job site, and we would have a motorcade, an entire real presidential motorcade. And if you know anything about DC, there's a lot of vehicles in a real presidential motorcade. Ambulances, Park Service Police, DC Police, and then you've got obviously Suburbans and limousines, and they have to be flagged correctly. They have to all be skinned correctly, so they have to look the part. And I just remember one time I was standing on a corner with the producer from The West Wing, and he said, "Stephanie, if this motorcade doesn't show up, I wonder who's going to pay the price for that." He turned to me, and I was like, "Oh, I guess that's me." So it was a really stressful job. And it always felt like life and death if something went wrong. I remember one time an actress wouldn't come out of her trailer because she didn't like her hair, and the producer from LA was just like, "You go deal with it." And I'm like, what am I supposed to say to this person? So, yeah, it was every day was an interesting challenge for sure.
And from the outside, it looks so glamorous, so captivating. But when you're doing what you were doing, when you're on the inside, is it kind of controlled chaos?
Oh, 100% controlled chaos. Yeah. And you are constantly putting out fires. Constantly. You just, something's going to go wrong. It just is. I remember one time we were filming, I don't remember if it was, I think it may have been The American President. And the film had to be driven to New York to be processed before it could fly to LA. And it got flagged. So sometimes we would put it on a plane. Sometimes we would just have it driven up by a PA, and it went through the X-ray machine and got flagged. So we had to film an entire day of filming because of that. So things like that happen. I did Spy Game, and they called me and said, okay, we need a 1964 Irish green Porsche. And because they'd filmed that in the UK. And I didn't think at the time to say, can you just ship that one over here? Because there were only 4 in North America. And the only one I could find to get brought down was in Canada. And the guy kept saying, I need it here a week before so I can check it out and make sure that it's right, it's going to work. It gets down here like literally the day before, and it is a rusted out piece of junk. He didn't tell me that. He wanted the money. He thought it was going to be an easy thing for him to kind of pull off. I couldn't use it. So I had to find a white one, the exact same model, get that to DC, find the paint, the Irish green paint, and have it painted overnight to have it on set the next day. I was up all night. I was sick to my stomach. I'm like, this is not going to work. And the guy who painted it said, do not ever tell anyone that I painted this because, it was just a super, super rush job that I had to get it on set. So because we had a helicopter going up in the air the next morning, at dawn to film this car zipping around DC. So stupid stuff like that. I remember one time we were filming a scene, I think it was first season of The West Wing with Rob Lowe, and he was near a fountain, and we were on the mall in D.C. It was a beautiful fountain. It was a beautiful night. It was middle of the night. I think it was close to midnight because...
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
The fountain stopped working. And now everybody just, the action on the set just stops, and we're all looking at each other, and we're like, well, whose job was that to make sure that was still going to be working at midnight? I mean, it went off. So now we're like, okay, who knows somebody at the Park Service? How are we going to get this thing back on? The set designers are trying to figure out if they can jerry rig some kind of hose to make it at least appear like the fountain is working. And we finally got someone on the line, and they were able to go somewhere to, I don't remember how they got back on, but we'd lost an hour at that point. So, we turned what should have been an 18-hour day into probably a 20-hour day.
Do actors and directors come in all types? I mean, from brilliant to not so bright, kind to mean, relaxed to perpetually anxious.
Yes. And I'm not going to name names, but I will say some of the best people I've been able to work with. So during Forrest Gump, I would say Tom Hanks was exactly like you would think he was. He was a cut up. He was a lot of fun. There's directors are maybe like doctors. They think, they are the greatest thing since sliced bread. So I've had some interesting directors I've worked with over the years, but I've also had some really great ones. I worked with Rob Reiner and on The American President, and I got to know him and the executive producer of that movie pretty well. And they flew my husband and I out to L.A. to see the sets out there, which were incredible. And, were like, you should move out here. And, my husband and I came pretty close, but ultimately didn't pull the trigger on that. I'm pretty glad I didn't make that leap over there. But and I'd say because I did The West Wing for 7 years, I never really hung out with the actors. I didn't try to. I was never that producer. I kept it very professional, and a lot of the actors just want to be in, do their job, and leave. So there was not like we're going to dinner and whatnot. But I did The West Wing for 7 years, so I got to know Martin Sheen pretty well, and he was just the loveliest person. He and Allison Janney. I actually would have dinner with Allison Janney, but Martin would come on set and he'd be like, Stephanie, can I get you a cup of tea? I'm like headed over to craft services. So I'll just talk about the really awesome ones and you can leave it to your imagination about the rest of them.
Did your years in the industry help you develop a more flexible view about having to have control over a project from top to bottom?
Oh, huh. So in the film business, we had to be people who were putting it all together. Like we had to be in total control, because if we didn't, like you said, it was organized chaos. And I guess that sort of translates over to building as well. And I think I maybe too much sometimes, that I feel like, I just have to make sure that everybody's where they need to be. Things are happening. And I double and triple check those things. So I do drive people kind of crazy, because I'll just keep calling like, I need an answer now. And that's how it always was in film business. But it's not really like that, certainly here in Sussex County, maybe, where they're not used to that constant kind of, I've got to make sure everything's, all my ducks are in a row. And there wasn't ever a time, there's never a time when I'm like, oh, I'll call that person tomorrow to make sure that's set up. No, I mean, I literally, if it's in my head, I got to take care of it like right then and there. So, but again, I don't do 20 houses a year. So I can keep a pretty tight rein on things. I try not to do more than 3 projects at the same time. I probably do between 5 and 6 a year total. And that's also to maintain that kind of quality control for me. It just, I'm not trying to become the biggest builder in Lewes. I just like to do custom jobs for people and move on to the next one.
But also, I would guess from knowing you, seeing how you work, knowing what working on film and production sets can be like, coming to Lewes, where next week is a traditional response. Yeah. Did it take a while to adjust?
No, it did. I would say it took me 3 years to find people, subs, particularly, who work the way I needed them to work. So it took me about 3 or 4 years to land on the folks that I use now, which I call the A team. People who, like, I call my plumber and I said, hey, this gas line didn't get run for this particular appliance, and he'll be out there the next day and take care of it. So, definitely, it took a little bit of time. I remember when I first started, I'd call my plumber and I'd be like, hey, I need this, this done. Something didn't get done. And he'd say, ooh, I'm in a duck blind. Or, ooh, it's hunting season, or it's fishing season. And I'm like, oh my God, this is not going to work for me. So, yeah, it took a while to find the people who had the same sort of, work ethic as I had. And I shouldn't say that these folks didn't have a work ethic, but, they grew up in Sussex County, and it's hunting season. So that's what they're going to do.
Despite all of the intensity, despite all of the time you had to spend on this, despite 20 hours a day, was this also kind of a lot of fun?
Oh my gosh, it was so fun. I loved it. I loved every minute of it. I got to do some of the coolest things. I got to be up in helicopters. I got to be on the American president. And there were things before 9/11 that we could do in D.C. that once 9/11 happened, there were barricades everywhere that, we couldn't film anymore. But I mean, in the middle of the night, filming a motorcade scene going past the White House. I mean, a full motorcade, with the motorcycle cops as well, Park Service police officers. And, I was in a sidecar as we're setting up the scene. Like, it's cool. I got to go under, places that most people can't go into. Like, we were under the Lincoln Memorial. Because whenever Hollywood comes to town, everybody, pulls out all the stops. I thought it was the most exciting thing. I've been in the White House a bazillion times because no matter who was in the White House, they always love Hollywood.
Did you notice just on that one point before politicians go absolutely crazy. I mean, they're the greatest fanboys in history when it comes to Hollywood.
Yeah, for sure. And
they lose their minds.
Yeah, they do. They roll out the red carpet for them when they come to town, and they love the whole spectacle of it. I mean, it's egos, right? There are lots of people with big egos, so they all are glad handing and getting together with a scotch. I mean, I did some really cool things at the Capitol that the average person doesn't get to do, and plenty of times at the White House. And I was always amazed, no matter who was in office, they loved the whole spectacle of LA and Hollywood coming into town. And I have to say, George Bush was great to us during the West Wing years, even though it was a Democratic president. And he was always, because the White House had to approve a lot of the stuff. I don't know if you remember the big basketball scene out on Pennsylvania Avenue that we had lit up with a giant light balloon up in the air and stuff. Like, that had to be approved by Secret Service, by the White House, by Park Police, by DC. And there were so many layers of approvals we had to get to even shoot that scene. And the Bush White House was always very accommodating for us. So I'm kind of glad I got out when I did in 2010.
What is it like to work that intensely with a group of people? Because this could be 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
And then that's it. And then the next day, everyone's gone.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
I mean, is
yeah.
that kind of crushing?
Oh, that's so funny that you landed on that because, yeah, that's, it's so intense for such a long time. And you're putting in so many hours and you're with these different groups of people and you're lining up these scenes, and it's scenes with, props and set design and lighting from every different angle and the camera people, and everybody needs to be a part of it. And then, you film these 20-hour days all in a row, and you're practically sleeping at the office, and then it's just suddenly over. And it's a total letdown. It's like this weird, like these people who you were just completely intensely involved with for months are now, everybody goes back to their lives, and then you wait till the next one starts up. But yeah, it's definitely, it was like you'd have to come down from that high. So emotions run really high too. I mean, there's a lot of, screaming, crying, yelling on sets. There's a lot. I mean, I just remember one time, it was the first season of The West Wing, and I was pregnant, and I was behind a tree crying because I just had to let out some steam because I was the middle of the night and something had gone wrong. I can't even remember now at the time. I mean, I'm sure at the time it seemed so monumental. It was probably something so stupid like somebody's wardrobe, was stuck in, LA or something. But you think it's just the end of the world, and you look back on it now and I'm like, I can't believe I got so worked up about that.
You and Carrie Fisher won the same award in 2005.
You did your homework.
What was that?
That was a Women in Film honor that I was given. I can't even remember what year that was.
2005.
2005. Oh, okay. I must have really made it at that point, I guess.
Did you get the award with her?
Yeah, so it was, so they would, give it to somebody local and somebody famous. And so Carrie Fisher was obviously the famous one. I think Richard Dreyfuss maybe gave her her award, and then mine was given to me by, I did a lot of work for Hearst Magazines in New York. And I actually did a promotional video for Oprah's magazine before it was even Oprah's magazine. This was a film. It wasn't a film. It was a little video to try to woo Oprah into doing a magazine with Hearst Magazines.
Seriously?
And then she did it. So so the woman from the head of Hearst Magazines gave me my award back then. So I thought that was pretty cool.
You grew up in Massachusetts. You graduated from Clark University and then received what you eventually called the greatest gift your mother ever gave you. What was that?
I love that you're going to ask that. My mom deserves so much credit, I'll tell you what. So I graduated from college, and I moved to Vermont, and I was working over the border in New Hampshire at a little radio station. And that was my first job out of college. I was writing radio commercials, but I also had to sell them. And I was good at the writing part. I was terrible at the selling part. And I remember they would give me a draw on my salary, like $100 a week. And sometimes I would have to pay them back. But I moved back to Massachusetts. I did that for a year. It was torture. Moved back to Massachusetts, and I moved in with my mom. And I think I was substitute teaching. And, you should never move back home because you revert back to being a child again and, expecting your mom to make you dinner and do your laundry. And my mom was fairly newly divorced, and she was not having it. And so she threw a map down and she said, pick a state. You got 2 weeks to pack your bags and get out. And I was like, what? And she said, yeah, you seem to like Washington, D.C. Why don't you go back there? So literally 2 weeks later, I had my crappy old car packed, and I was driving to D.C. with tears rolling down my face going, what am I going to do? But
you didn't have a job?
I didn't have a job. I stayed at, there's a little place on Capitol Hill where staffers, like interns, would stay. It was called the Women's Christian Home, the Thompson Markwood Hall. Oh, gosh. And you had a room. It was like a dorm. And they had breakfast and dinner for, it was mostly for young women working on the Hill, and then me. And I remember it was $200 a week. And I had enough money for 2 weeks, and I was looking for a job. I couldn't find a job. And I remember calling my dad and saying, can I borrow $200? And he said, no.
Whoa.
So I had to figure it out. Again, my parents taught me a lot of lessons. You got to figure stuff out. So I got a waitressing job. I think I got 4 jobs, actually, until I finally landed on JFK that in 1991, that first film, and then it led to other films. I mean, I still had to bartend on the side and get a couple of other hustles going. But
and at that time, you were probably making better money at bartending.
Oh, 100%.
Than on the movie set.
Oh, my gosh. It was back in the day, they paid PAs $75 flat, no matter how many hours you worked. They don't do that anymore. So they stopped that little practice. But yeah, $75. And I remember I was always excited to work on a movie set because the lunches were so good and I had no money to buy food. So and from craft services is basically like, they have snacks for the crew all day long. And I remember going, oh, can I just take a few at the end of the day? And that would be like my lunch the next day or whatever if I wasn't on the set. So
how did you meet Barry?
So when I moved up to Vermont, Barry had gotten out of the Army, and he was working at a car dealership, and he was, talk about a hustler. He was getting up in the morning at 4 a.m. and making burritos, and he was selling them to Cumberland Farms, or in my accent back in the day, I said Cumberland Farms, and he would drop them off and sell them, and that's how he raised the capital to start his own restaurant. He opened a little restaurant called the first Mexican restaurant in that area.
Wait a minute. So Barry started a Mexican restaurant in Vermont?
In New Hampshire, right across the border, in Lebanon, New Hampshire, called Nacho Mama's. And so he was one of my first clients. I wrote his radio commercials, and that's how that's how we met. And so when I moved to D.C., he closed his restaurant down, and he, it was either like we break up or we stay together. So he closed his restaurant down, and he came down and joined me.
And he took his...
And then he became a U.S. Marshal.
He became a U.S. Marshal, the logical...
Absolutely.
The logical job growth pattern.
Exactly.
Mexican restaurant, U.S. Marshal.
U.S. Marshal.
Are you going to be as tough on your daughter as your mom was with you?
Oh, that's a good question. I wonder if she'd say that I am. So my daughter is a business owner in Florida now, and she's really hard on herself, like really, really hard on herself. So she set some goals, and she keeps trying to achieve them and works really, really hard. So she's a hustler too. She learned it from her mom and dad. Sydney never wanted to come home, so I never had that problem. Even from college, she was always like, yeah, I'll stay here for a week, but I'm moving to Ocean City, and I'm going to work in Ocean City for the summer. So she never came home when she left high school. So we would track her down wherever she is. We're like, Dad and I miss you. Can we see you and come stay with you maybe? So she's down in Florida now, and we every opportunity we try to get down there to see her.
Looking back on this incredible career you've had, what is it about Lewes that makes it the place where you want to have your home?
So my best friends are here. You probably seen me palling around with Lisa and Mariah. So, I mean, this is home. These are, the people that I choose to spend my time with. I'm really lucky that my best friends and all of our husbands are best friends. And so we spend a lot of time together, and Lewes is our common denominator. So, yeah, I mean, Lewes is a really special place. It has been important to us since 2001 when we first came down here. And it's a close-knit community. I always felt when Sydney was growing up that, people had eyeballs on her. It was a really safe place for her to grow up. I was mostly happy when, she was learning to drive, that we no longer lived in the D.C. area. She was learning to drive here, and, kind of when it was still a little more quiet up on Route 1. But, yeah, we've always been really proud to live in Lewes and call Lewes home.
Steph, thanks for joining us today, for your amazing stories, for the chance to catch a glimpse behind the scenes of a world so many of us find so fascinating. That's right, construction. For those thinking about a building project, you'd be remiss not to meet with Stephanie. Her client list is more impressive than this podcast's guest list. Thanks for you joining us today, for your kind comments, and for giving us so much of your time. It's already been an amazing year for the podcast, and we're just getting started. And thanks to our sponsor, Tide Runner Adventures, who help you make the most of your time together on or in the water. Till next time, from our headquarters at the Beloved Bar and Kindle Restaurant, this has been We in Lewes, the podcast.